Man, guys, I'm here in Philadelphia still. One of my favorite places, football field. I'm training, hoping that the most underrated NFL coach will give me a call, Doug Pederson, while I'm down here. But I'm running out of time. And I actually don't think I'm in enough shape yet. I think it's the cheesesteaks. Anyway, there's been a lot of talk, as there always is, during the hard court season, of the balls they're using. Well, before you can even talk about that, you need to know a little bit about the climates they're dealing with. But the one big thing too is we're only talking about two brands of balls, Wilson and Penn. And one interesting note, I'm here in Philadelphia. Penn originated in Pennsylvania, and it was really the first true American tennis ball. It was actually Jeanette, PA, which is by where I grew up in Pittsburgh. And they no longer really are in business. It's run by Head now. But the bottom line is they are doing some evolving big time to try to sync it with the Wilson ball to make it a smoother transition. And it's only the first year of that. Why it took them, I mean, I've been looking at this stuff for over 10 years. I studied Penn way long ago. I don't know why it took so long, and all I can think is the stubborn, conservative type of mind that seems to infiltrate all of sport. Everything takes long, and anything new or anything a little off, or God forbid, any lack of credentials, makes it for a problem. But no, they're finally working on it. It looks like they're going to have to work some more to get it right. But then again, you got to watch going by players, because I know Rafa Nadal's saying some things, and he's actually correct. A lot of times the players, I've studied, I've talked to manufacturers, and I know what really is going on from the manufacturing standpoint. And so when I've heard players, and I won't tell you what some of these guys said, but some of the manufacturing people I've talked to are just roll their eyes at some of the things the players say. The players only know by what they're feeling in the heat of the battle. So they're not always spot on about what they're saying about the technology. Nor should they even be worried too much about it. I always think if we were ever to bring some work on conditions into the tennis world, it would be like a conditions consultant. It's part of the team, not like the coach, not the players. And you don't want the players thinking about all this. It's more like, here's what I know about the balls happening this year, the way the weather looks like it's going to be, the way the surface is. Anything you've heard about or know about, or if it changes, or you find out when you're playing, and you can get the feedback from the players on that. But again, feedback from players is very emotional. It's very subjective. Feedback from manufacturers is somewhat objective. It's more objective. There's still some subjectivity because each manufacturer wants to be the best. There's some selling things going on there too, but whatever. Anyway, the guy from DecoTurf used to always tell me, all the courts are playing the same. I don't think that's totally true. I think that's really hard to do. So that's just where, but he was proud of that. And DecoTurf is one of the best, if not the best, for hard courts at the pro level for what they use for the pros. It's totally different for amateur club stuff. It's a completely different ball game. That's more about longevity, of how long the court will last. For the pros, they resurface it every year, and it's more about the qualities they can put into that court to affect the game in a good way. Keep it fair for everyone, really, in the end of the day. So what I'm going to say right now is, as you can tell, I am slightly out of shape, but I'm working on it in this beautiful field here. If the weather wasn't so dry right now, I mean, the sun's beating down, but it's not so bad because it's dry weather in Philadelphia right now in August. A little unusual, but really not as much as people think. It's a misnomer that even people down here would tell me, it's so humid all the time down here, It can get really humid, and there's reasons for this. It's the location, the geography, the Appalachian chain to the west. If the water, this is all stuff I learned with meteorologists and stuff I studied 10 years ago. And if the water coming up from the south, up the Atlantic, and that wind, if the air masses move in from there, they will jam up with what I call a moisture dump. There is something called a rain shadow effect. That's the other way, when the winds come the other way. That's a real term. I made up moisture dump. But it becomes like a moisture dump, and that's why Philly can get so humid. But if the winds are coming from the other direction, the northwest, that's bringing dry air, and or whatever moisture is being nailed by the Appalachian chain. You get a rain shadow effect as it goes up the mountain, comes down. It's a much drier air. So Today is one of those days where we're getting a dry air. Now, why am I saying all this? Because Montreal has a similar effect. Montreal was very tricky up in the northern, not northern part, but further up north in Canada. Montreal's probably the most north they go to play tennis that we study or whatever. And Montreal's sort of in a valley, so you're going to get that valley effect of humid, damp air. And again, there was an argument on Twitter a while ago about the balls and whether they're really affected, whether it's a real effect on the dampness, moisture accumulation on felt. Well, I can just say it is. On a moving ball, not a stationary ball, they play with a ball in motion and with a spin. Yes, moisture accumulation will help to slow that weight of the ball. It's an effective weight. They haven't really measured it in motion to tell, but it doesn't matter. It's an effective weight. Every tennis player will tell you that. I've studied it with other people and they agree. But anyway, so the thing is, there's also air pressure. A lot of this is air pressure too. It's not really about the density of air, believe it or not. That's a whole nother subject for another day, but it's about air pressure. So yes, humidity will slow down the game. Let's just say that. Montreal, even if the humidity levels look high, it's not always, it's more about the barometric pressure, and I looked at that stuff too. So like the humidity you get in South America will be totally different. Everywhere is different. You have to take it. The humidity in London, it doesn't take much. 50% is going to be heavy air. It's just a different, again, not heavy molecular-wise, but like a slower air. London is predominantly a slow type of climate for tennis, and you especially find that in the indoor at the end of the year. But, so Montreal is like Philly, where it can be slow and humid and a slow climate, but it can change quickly. And it can change any day. And like today, this would be a fast climate if they were playing in this weather. And especially with the sun coming down, and that speeds up the ball. It gets the molecular activity in the ball, so it makes any air compression more inside the ball, and it will make it faster. But anyways, so that's radiation. You have pressure, you have the humidity, you have a combination of all this kind of stuff. So Montreal can flip back and forth from very slow to actually pretty quick. And what they do there, what they've always done, as far as I know, since I've studied it for years, is make it a little quicker on the surface, because they are dealing with that humidity. And they think that, we have to make it a little quicker, and whatever, that's the choice they make. So when it's on one of those faster days, Montreal can play pretty fast. Other days, not so much, but usually not below medium speed. And then as far as Toronto, totally different idea. So Montreal's a little like Philly, where it flips. Not the same geography, but the same kind of flipping thing I'm talking about. Toronto's predominantly sort of in the slow area. And what they do there, they sand Toronto up a little more. And they've always done that there because they feel like they're heading to the Midwest, from what I've learned before. And as you go to the Midwest, you do get a drier, faster climate. And so they're thinking that way. And it's hot in the summer as well. And all the sun action speeds up the ball. So they make it a little slower in Toronto, but the problem there is they have some hills, and if you look at Toronto on a map, it has water, the lake effect around it, and then behind it is some hills, and it's kind of like an accumulation there of moisture. So from what I've always seen, what I've always learned, and what I've always heard, is Toronto in general is a little slower because they sand it a little more, thinking they're doing the right thing, but they're just keeping it a little slower than Montreal. Because the weather really isn't faster there in Toronto like they think it would be for Montreal. And then, so the other thing is, you have to know about that stuff. We're going to go to Cincinnati this week coming up, and Cincinnati is fast. It has a fast climate, and that is very tricky business. The best I can tell you is, I was from Dayton, Ohio. I was born there. I grew up in Pittsburgh later, but I was born in Dayton. And that's Tornado Valley. In fact, one of the greatest tornadoes that wiped out Xenia next to Dayton, I was right around when that happened. And I remember driving over there with my family after. The town was destroyed. But anyway, there's a reason that it's Tornado Alley. And there's a confluence of air from the northwest, and during the summer, it's just a confluence of air masses that create a quick air, even with high humidity. They have some high humidity there, but it doesn't, it's more about the pressure. Again, it's complicated, but I don't know as much as like a meteorologist, but I talked to meteorologists that said, yes, Cincinnati would be a faster air. So over the years, they've sort of sanded it a little more. I also think they like their tennis a little faster there, so they didn't sand it so much maybe in the beginning, but they've sanded it more and more, and I know that directly from the guy who runs DecoTurf back a few years ago. So they were already in the process of doing that, trying to keep it at a medium speed and not let it get carried away in the speed. But that's why Roger's done so well there. It tends to get fast there. So that's what we're going to be dealing with this week. Now, I'm just using this as a prelude to the talk about the balls, because you kind of have to know all this and then what's going on with the balls now that goes into that. And like I said, this has been a long thing. So I'll talk about that in my next video. And in the meantime, I've got to get back to work and try to get off some of this poundage and see if Pederson will give me a call soon. I'll be back tomorrow, guys.